Blessings and welcome back, everyone, to the Heart of Virgo season and the 17th episode in our journey through the zodiacal faces. I'm Elsa, and I'm joined happily again today with KD Dayton, kddayton.com, and David Fisher from In the First Place. Welcome back, everyone. It feels like it's been a few weeks for us, so we're all excited to be here. I'm always in so much appreciation and gratitude to be with you all, and it's always such a pleasure. And I wanted to say thank you to all of our new subscribers. We've gotten a lot of new subs and a lot of new comments out there. And I'm not sure if people are comfortable like me saying their subscriber names and stuff like that. Maybe we'll do some shout outs. Let us know in the comments below if you want us to shout you out as new subscribers and commenters. We've gotten a lot of interaction, so thank you all for that. Let's dive in. Does anyone have any little things they want to say just before we get started?
I do. On that spirit, don't forget to interact with this particular video. Subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed yet. Like, comment, because that helps YouTube share this content with people who are looking for it online. And if you think it's useful for you, maybe other people find it as well. So please do that. It's a form of retributing if you guys would like to do so.
Yeah, absolutely. Sharing is caring.
Cooperating.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
totally.
And to get down to the business, I do want to mention before we start that this Decan, Virgo 2, is September 2nd or 3rd until September 11th, 12th is when the sun transit that sign. So want to make sure to get up.
Yay, good job for remembering that.
Thank you. Someone remember the dates.
Perfect. Thank you, KD. And actually, I'm just going to mention right off the top because I'll probably forget it. I was talking to David. I'm going to be doing a special for the month of September. I had a little bit of time open up in my September in my daytime. I had like a 4-hour window open up. And so I'm going to be doing discounted readings. I'm going to do name your price readings because I really want to interact with the viewers here on YouTube. So if you're interested in getting a reading, like a Hellenistic reading or any other kind of, natal, electional, or just kind of seeing my work, you can feel free just to write me an email. It's on the About section, but I just wanted to get y'all that chance to come participate a little bit more personally with us for the Exalted Mercury Virgo season. Get that that magical sort of alchemical mix with our viewers. So please do hit me up. All right, so Austin Coppock in his book 36 Faces calls this the hammer and the anvil. And we'll get deep into the idea of that kind of hard work. And when I was thinking, this Decan is really what made me think, like when I had time open up, like, ooh, I really want to get in there and get on that grind, get in that mercurial spirit, get in that sharing spirit. And so we've got that kind of work essence coming through here. Susan Chang calls this perfection alone, which I think is really beautiful because when we think about Virgo, we think about, the perfection or the perfectionist, like a lot of people, that's kind of its cliche. And then when you think about perfection alone, something being sort of like singled out, or the idea of aloneness is kind of that hermetic or that, the old man figure that we see with the Hermit card. So I thought that was really beautiful. And then the Hermetic deck refers to it as the Lord of Material Gain. So we've got the 9 of Pentacles here, which is a really prosperous card. So this is going to be a fun dichotomy to dive into with Venus being the sublord and Mercury being the obvious main lord for Virgo. And it's going to be interesting because of the fact that Venus takes her fall traditionally in Virgo. And we did have one viewer talk to us about the Chaldean order versus other rulership schemes. And I just wanted to shout out to you. Good comment. Thank you very much. I think it was a comment on the 3rd Decan of Aries. And they were saying that, there are alternative lords, and sometimes we'll mention them, sometimes we don't. But in this one, I think I'll mention a little bit more because the viewer brought it to light, and also because it's a really interesting dynamic. So when you have Venus, this beautiful sort of like Venusian feminine quality, who takes its fall in Virgo, we're going to talk about that. But then we have the triplicity method where Saturn is the alternative ruler here. And I think that's going to come up again and again because we have like Saturn as the reaper. We've got like that hermit, that old man. And also Saturn exalts Venus, right? So I thought that was, you know, I want to get a little bit into those dynamics. And I feel like that really kind of, it brings it out with the hammer and anvil, because it's not just the attention to detail in the final product, but it's sort of that, you know, nose to the grindstone part of Saturn that gets us those Venusian sort of like jewelry or swords or craftsmanship. So it's kind of where craftsmanship of Mercury meets the beauty of Venus and the hard work that Saturn does behind the scene to make those things sort of come alive and bring us that 9 of Pentacles. When one of the key words for the 9 of Pentacles that I took from the Hermetic deck was the treasuring of goods. So that's a really Venusian quality, I feel like, and a mercurial quality. And when you think about like the harvest, the reaping, the treasuring of material abundance, or the treasuring of a precious stone or something like this, I think it really brings all those rulers together. So that being said, I will kind of skim through some of my notes on Austin Coppock's 36 Faces. He says here that the second face, it's the ongoing shaping and refining of material. So materia, and that's kind of the focus here, is that shaping and that refining. Again, you can look at that as the Venusian qualities, the attention to detail with Mercury. You can think of that also as that slimming and paring back that Saturn does. This state fortifies, but also conceals the spirit's light. So as it takes form, and this reminded me too of the psychopomp, right? So as spirit comes into matter, it conceals itself from us. Like we can't remember our past lives or our infinite spirit necessarily, but at the same time, it's what gives spirit the ability to sort of enact itself. And David and I were talking a little bit about these principles, which I'm sure we'll go over again. So in several images, Austin goes on to say that we've got this theme of encasement. So you can think of that as well as like a encased jewel encased into the body, that kind of material and spiritual dynamic.
Can I bring something up?
Yeah, please.
I wanted to interject here with the degree of exaltation of Mercury being present in this decan,
Yes.
because we are talking about Mercury being joyful in the first house. We talked about this before, I think, in the channel. Have we?
Yes, yes, we have. Yes, we absolutely have. And you can watch that video on the first and second house.
Right. Yes. We talked about there. So Mercury is joyous in the first house because it is the joining of you know, the ideal realm with this earthly realm. That's what it represents, the joining of earth and sky, the horizon plane. And so Mercury has this double function of trying to assimilate these two worlds together to create the living experience within this world. Because what is a living being if not something that is manifesting these ideals, these spiritual things or beings, or, you know, transcendental kind of beings into this material realm, at least from what we understand. And so having this shaping of material being mentioned here in this decan, I think is very appropriate, because I think it calls back to this idea of Mercury being the one who, we are kind of mercurial creatures in the sense that we are kind of symbols for divinity. We stand so the gods or God or cosmic energy can manifest through us. We are not, we don't have a goal in ourselves. Everything is transcendental to us. And that's like, we're always doing something for a higher ideal than just ourselves, right? It's something that we idealize that compels us.
Yeah, it's that logos, the little logos, the big logos. It's that kind of like spirit into matter, like we were saying. And it also reminds me of like the Buddhist philosophy or ideals of the preciousness of human birth. like what the real preciousness that it takes to have a body. Yes, you forget. Yes, you're stripped away from oneness and spirit, and you know there's a certain amount of pain that it takes to press that spirit into the body, shall we say. But in doing that, we're able to, like, we have this opportunity to actually become enlightened, or to you know, become godlike, like you're saying, David, or something like this. And to me, those are that's the real heart of Virgo, and that's the real heart of the exaltation degree that you were talking about. That heart of the exaltation of Mercury is that idea. That's the psychopomp idea of like spirit into matter and them serving one another at their highest form.
Yeah, and I find it really interesting that Virgo is one of the signs of the zodiac that is in fact represented by a humanoid figure. I find it really interesting this, you know, where spirit meets matter and being represented by a humanoid figure, exactly as you say, the humans as mercurial figures being the as above, so below incarnate.
Yeah, and when you think about like commerce, like this is what David and I were talking about too, is like when you think about material, like when I think about Venus, right? Like jewels and food and like all of these things, and you see Venus has its fall here. And maybe you can tell, but yet this is a very abundant decan, right? We've got the 9 of Pentacles and all these things. And I think what we were talking about is just like that, taking that into like the spiritual realm, because a lot of Virgo and these next few like signs are about the darkening of the light and this sort of like falling away from the material realm. And maybe that's what, it's a different type of beauty that we see here. That's why maybe Venus takes its fall, because you've got, just that stripping away, I guess, quality of turning that beauty into something that's like more spiritual and not necessarily this we have the stripping away of the physical materia in some sense. So, you know, when we're thinking about like commerce, okay, so you've got Venus as commerce and you have Mercury as commerce. It's almost like when we're trading materia with soul, we're getting this this trade, this commerce, right? Between the soul and the body, and between God and ourselves and the image of God and what we want to be. It's like a different type of commerce, like a spiritual commerce.
It's an exchange rate, a spiritual exchange rate.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
two different currencies, of information, of communication, which are the things that Mercury peddles in, right? And there's spiritual knowing and material knowing.
And you get that with the Hermit card being represented for Virgo too. It's like this internal knowing that's like stripped away. And when I was reading about the lantern in the Hermetic deck, it was saying that the lantern, its light was being born by some like ethereal spirit gases that were just kind of like glowing from the inside or something like this, right? Okay. So you have that kind of enriched spirit and stripping away of matter, like you know, everything we planted. We again, for Virgo we see like seeds and abundance and all of these things. When we think about it, it's like what we planted in the earth sign Taurus, which is all those Venusian like things. Here we're having to make peace with stripping them all away, and like winter's around the corner, right? And that could be like a spiritual thing as well, you know?
It's something that's interesting when you're combining two inner planets that are so close to the earthly plane, as in the order of the 7 spheres. Yes. Because you have the moon, which is the closest to the earth, and then Mercury, and then Venus. Those inner planets, they are very good working together sometimes, but where they fail is on seeing the larger perspective. The 9 of Pentacles does show an overview of a determined, mode of action that is very profitable, but not necessarily accounting for the spiritual truths behind whatever you're engaging with. What do I mean by that? I mean that it is very material. This is all very material here. It's all about circumstance and how to maintain one's stability through circumstance. because we were talking about the Empress with that abundance of material resources and the ability to access those material resources mixed with the energy of the Hermit, which is capable of seeing things broadly and selecting. That lantern light thingy represents selection principle, selecting from within that which is most useful for them at that point in time. And so this is what we see manifested in the Nine of Pentacles, where the person achieves such a high degree of embodiment of the structure that they are inserted into, or knowledge over that structure, that they are able to kind of be the magician over that structure and select from the infinitude of resources that which is most appropriate to its personality, to embody that which it holds most sacred to itself. However, because life is ever changing, I feel like we must always keep a spiritual perspective of connection to other. And this is where I feel like Venus takes its fall, because it will always expect, Venus, when it gets comfortable, it has a problem. And this is the diversion, the aversion from Libra to Virgo, whereas Taurus, which is the institutions, has a trine, a superior trine to Virgo. You see the institutions tell Virgo, this is how it's supposed to be. And Virgo is, fine, I can deal with it. I already embody the principles that you taught me, and I can adapt to whatever comes my way. However, this is very exclusionary, which is not a Venusian principle. And so you can see the facade of Venus in terms of being very compliant to the rituals that are being imposed by the structure in order to profit from it, in order to keep itself stable. So very material. But in the spiritual sense, it's a square to Sagittarius. And it's a square to a place where the vision is broadened enough that you can extract a narrative that will be all-encompassing. That will be
opposite Pisces even more.
It's opposite Pisces.
Yeah,
more, yes.
Like every Jupiter's always going to have that sort of like
opposition to Mercury.
Yes, exactly, that kind of oppositional
in the domicile sense.
But exactly,
and so
it's great. Yeah.
Just to conclude, you have this mercurial quality really being embodied by Venus to an extreme that actually harms Venusian significations in a way that strips Venus from its essential character and makes it only a facade of Venus, which is what we see with fallen planets many times.
It calls to mind a few different things about the nature of Mercury and Venus as well, just to elaborate on what you were saying. Mercury, oftentimes we would think of Mercury as adaptable and flexible, but this combination with Venus makes the Venusian things almost fragile and breakable because it's not solid, it's not on firm ground. In the sign of Virgo, it's fall. And the other thing I want to mention is that in T. Susan Chang's book, 36 Secrets, she quotes Austin Coppock. I thought that would be appropriate to bring up during this section, where he refers to Venus and Virgo as perfection of form.
Absolutely, absolutely. And that's that ideal image or that idealized state of like the spirit and matter in form, that logos. And what I was thinking too, when we were talking, or when I was listening to you too, is the alternative rulership scheme of Saturn, where when you think about the Hermit, it's a very Saturnine, cloaked in black wool, a renunciate essentially. And the other thing that I wanted to talk about with Virgo is the Vestal Virgins. So, and I'm sure we'll get to that, but it's that same sort of like renunciate quality of like, someone who's beautiful, but just dressed in like a white thing with like some braids in the hair, not adorned with the jewelry, not having all the pomegranates, not having like all the babies and the lovers and the food, but being held at some kind of like pure spiritual ideal of keeping that fire going, which is just like a pure spirit renunciate type of quality, right? Which is a lot different than when you think of like a bejeweled queen.
Yep.
So okay, so I think I just have a few more notes from Austin. That was a good little rant, and from these notes, I mean, I might be repeating some things that we've already kind of covered. So he says here, spirit has enclosed itself into a dense body in order to gain control over gross layers of the physical plane. And we'll talk about these layers because we see in all the imagery, which I think is, I have a planet here and I identified with this. We've got like layers of encasement, right? So like layers of clothing. It's not just like one piece of clothing. It's a piece on a piece on a piece. And in the Picatrix, we talk about like the iron and then the silk and then this. So it's like, it shows how even like what David was saying about the going through the layers of the planetary spheres or whatever, you get more and more encased, you get more and more cloaked, you kind of get like more and more hermitized as you put on these different layers of being, essentially. So yeah, the gross layers of the physical plane.
I want to say something with the gross layers of the physical plane. It's just
yeah,
that
I would like to say something too after. Yeah.
you would never see, we are not a perfect embodiment of the divine spirit, right? When we have exalted planets, when we have domiciled planets in our charts, we generally see that person embodying a determined quality of that planet, or that what is attributed to that deity in the tradition is very prominent in that person's personality, and it's very natural for them to embody. And that's already an impressive quality that will be notable in their character, right? But we are not perfect vessels for expressing every divine quality there is, and it would be impossible, you know? So when we're talking about this enclosing of spirit, we're talking about the mixing of the Hermit and the Empress again, the Empress being this multiple ideal, the Hermit being this selective ideal within that multiple. We see that the mixture of these cards will, or these ideals will give us this kind of mimical expression of what our intentions are. Notice the word I'm using, intentions, something that you are tensing within your soul that propagates movement outwards. Think of some ideal being born in your heart that then compels you to act on the world. That action is going to be a feigned appearance in relation to the idea that was born in your heart. The proof of that is that many times it gets lost in translation what we're trying to say, and the other person gets it in a completely different way. Many times even averse to what we intended, and we cause problems to ourselves because of it. Or we don't know the weight of the words that we're saying, or things like that. Anyway, because we fail to connect to the other person even because of our own patterns, right? This is also an expression of Venus.
I was going to say, yeah, exactly that. Like that ability to connect to the other versus the Hermit, which is withdrawing from the other. Like that's a Venusian thing, like our inability to withhold that ideal. And like when you think about idealizing like the Virgin Mother or the Virgin Mary or the Vestal Virgin or something like this, when we think about that ideal, we're thinking about like someone who does radiate those like internal qualities like perfectly or whatever, but we see with Venus in fall here that it's not that easy. Or like the Hermit like has to renounce and go to the mountain and like do this whole inner journey, and it's not always going to shine through in that perfect state. And I think when it comes to connection, that's again that Venus fall thing is like it's very hard for us to actually radiate those ideals in that perfected form that
Venus
Virgo
strives
wants
for
to, or
ideal.
Because it's an isolation. Yeah.
What?
Because it's an isolation, you know, it doesn't have anything to connect. It can be the perfect ideal, but if nobody's there to see it, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And Mercury representing,
go ahead.
Mercury representing many people, and the debate that different opinions and different perspectives will bring to any given topic really gives already a lot of difficulty for Venus to be able to create what Libra wants to create, which is an agreement that will contemplate every perspective possible, so everyone will be comfortable enough that we can have a hierarchy, that we can have a functional society, that we can have everyone mutually benefiting from this agreement.
Yeah, we have to remember that
Libra wants to forget this this mercurial lesson.
Yes, we have to remember Mercury is the deconstructionist. It wants to argue. It doesn't, where Venus wants to come together and get married and connect with others and all those things. Mercury, although we've got like some beautiful, you know, like ideas of like commerce, but that debate, it's the deconstructing that happens. It's the end of a season here. Like we're getting into like, once we're passing the torch from the light to the dark when we hit that Libra and that exalted Saturn ideal. So yeah. You wanted to say something, KD, about the gross layers of the physical plane?
Yeah, well, I just really liked the analogy of these layers of clothing, of covering, and how they can serve different functionalities, and how you can think of that both abstractly in talking about the material plane, but also an actual outfit of some sort.
Mm-hmm.
So again, this progression of different types of covering can go from covering to keep yourself comfortable, covering to protect yourself, and also covering to impress other people and be on display, right? And if you think of a knight, let's say a knight who is fighting, maybe it's the Page of or Knight of Pentacles or something here, they have underneath a linen garment that is comfortable and breathable and somewhat easy for them to function in. Then they have their layer of armor, their layer of chainmail, and then they have their silks with the banners and the banners of their houses and the emblems of their houses on it. And that's the way that they dress and what they wear. It's ritual, you know, like that outer garment, that's Venus, that's the facade, and it is the first thing to go in battle.
Yeah, the first thing to go,
turn off.
which Venus takes that fall here. And the Picatrix talks about that too, layers of leather, then layers, you know, you've got the linen, then the leather, then the iron, then the silk, or whatever it is, you know. And I was listening to a bunch of stuff on the Vestal Virgins just to kind of like get the juices flowing with that story. And they talked about the garments that they would wear would be, you know, quite layered. When you think about like Vestal Virgins, you think about like a white flowing dress or something, but they were really layered to sort of conceal the form of their body to maintain that purity, right? So whether you're talking about like the linen protecting the skin from the leather and the chainmail and the iron or all that, or just the idea of like chastity, or when you think of Virgo, you think of like, what do I want to say? Not purity, but like some kind of like a, not humility, but like kind of like a heightening,
servile.
It's what's the word that I'm thinking of? Just like a modesty, I guess you could say, something like this, right? Like that's a word that we use for Virgo a lot. Like almost, it could be used as like a hiding, or protection, or like a modesty when you think of like the Virgin Mary, the Vestal Virgin, the young woman, like all those things.
And
like
that brings us back to the coverings that we talked about.
Yes, or like the covering of the body, cloaking the soul, or anything like that. You know?
Exactly.
So then to the coverings, one thing that I wanted to point out is in the traditional, I don't have the Rider-Waite here, I just have the Nine of Pentacles, Lord of Material Gain in the Hermetic deck, which I'm sure we're going to see a version of this when Katie does her display. But what I wanted to mention was the hooded hawk that is a lot of times depicted. We have it here. This is a somewhat traditional style because they do keep the hooded hawk in there. And this awesome deck, I should just shout out to this Afro Goddess deck. So awesome. It's like traditional, but like they keep like a lot of the traditional symbolism in there. But they're just absolutely gorgeous cards. Anyway, the hooded hawk, or the hooded falcon, and Austin talks about like the birds of prey, sort of like going after, like we have that walled garden idea again back from Taurus, the other earth sign. And again, now we're having the harvest of the garden and everything. The idea of concealing the falcon's head with the hood as like this ultimate, like it has the ability to soar and see. It's this, again, this spirit but the spirit that is, this bird of prey or birds in general being cloaked in order to be used as a hunter, or in order to be used as a use object or something like this. Again, like the idea of hiding the spirit with matter, cloaking the eyes of the hawk until you're ready to like let it get its prey or whatever it is from the garden. So that just reminded me again of that kind of like layer of spirit and matter and cloaking and all of those things. So Austin talks here then about the beauty of the finished product that we see. It conceals the pain and the toil that's necessary for its creation. So again, think jeweler, think swords, think these tools that are like these pristine, precious, calculated crafts when they're done. So we're talking about, again, pentacles and crafting. We talked about the crafting in the Seven of Pentacles. Just how much pain and toil goes into that is a lot of times unseen in the finished product. So again, you have Venus, which is that outer layer of silk that you were talking about, which is like the accolades and the print, like all the gems and jewels, and kind of foregoing what I feel like is the Virgoan nature, or even let's say the Saturnine nature of the blood, sweat, and tears and months of processing and detail oriented. Like everyone doesn't want to be bogged down, devils in the details. They don't like it, but they want the final product. They want the beautiful painting or the song or the instrument or the sword or the jewels, but no one really wants to reckon with the pain that it takes to toil towards those things. And I think sometimes Virgo in a way is happy to conceal that process, or Virgo as like the servant, right, is just like, doing the details regardless of if anybody sort of sees the pain and the toil that comes with the ultimate product, because they know that someone's just looking for the ultimate good outcome, and they don't.
A perfect example of what you're saying in just comparative terms is that scene from The Devil Wears Prada where Andy comes up to Nigel in the photo shoot, and she's complaining about her routine, and he's like, "Oh honey, let me know when your life goes up in smoke. That means it's time for a promotion." And this is Venus in Mercury sign in Virgo to a T. It's like you focus so much in having perfection on the final product, like on having that perfection of adapting all the time to keep up the structure. Because think about the monarchy. What all of those institutions that last for centuries, which is Taurus, really, Venus ground, something stable through time and circumstance, as we said before. All of those things, they require an immense level of keeping, of just effort to keep all the time, adaptiveness, people who sacrifice themselves all the time, put themselves on the line for those institutions to thrive. This has been done again and again. Whenever a royal commits a crime or does something wrong, somebody else will take the fall for them. And
the head will be taken of someone else. Yes.
Yes. So it's not about real connections. It's not about spiritual truths. It loses all what Venus is about, and it reduces the Venusian principle to this shell of the facade of structure and stability, when in actuality, this is just a human projection, a human necessity put into, like, be imposed into this earthly reality that everything is changeable. Nothing is meant to last this long.
And on that, like, when we think about the high qualities of Venus, we're talking about beauty and truth, like truth as beauty or beauty as truth, something like this. And I think when we come to Virgo, like Virgo is willing to do all the grunt work to get there in this sort of like humble, kind of like sweep the floors, mop the thing, like this kind of like movable, mutable, like it takes all the details and we're not going to complain, we're just going to do all the things, right? Or and when we think about like royalty and Venusian qualities, when they're like in their fall, we just think of like, I don't care what it takes to get me the crown, get it, or whatever, like I don't care what it takes to make me that necklace, do it or whatever, you know, and they're like not appreciating all the detail, all the work, all the labor, all the love, all of those sort of like inner like hermit, like inner wisdom, things that it takes to produce the final product. And that's when we do get Venus like at its worst. Like Venus, if you think about a queen, all of a sudden having to like figure out what it takes to make her dress or whatever that took like 10 months to make or something like that, she couldn't be bothered.
Right.
You know, she couldn't be bothered. And it would
well,
be
and
like,
I mean, any planet except for Venus, like one of the things that I really like about Virgo and is often an interpretive, you know, key word that I use is the craftsmanship. I mean, like that is the nature of trying to create something beautiful and not necessarily let on the amount of skill and the amount of time that went into creating that thing. So, I mean,
absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. And Venus, again, at its fall, couldn't be bothered and doesn't care. Just get me the dress.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is, you know? And I feel like
that's the intricate thing, not going to do it myself.
Yeah, give me the embroidery and I don't care how many hands had to go into making it, don't bother me or whatever. So okay, so I think we've got that. That's another like form of like concealing beauty through like materia in a way that's maybe corrupted, which when we think about a fallen planet or some of these ideals about like going in and wisdom and purity and truth and beauty and what all of those things are, some of those ideals when you have a fallen planet are going to be twisted or corrupted in some type of a way. So, all right, it's only through heat and force and sweat, this is Austin, that the most delicate and elegant works are created. The dual mystery revealed is of the intimate relationship between beauty and ugliness. And then he goes on to talk about the Greek myth, which you guys can look into, of Aphrodite. And there was the Hephaestus, I think is how you say his name. He was like said to be like ugly, but he would make Hephaestus, thank you, would make the most beautiful things for Aphrodite, right? And he was said to be like the most ugly smith or whatever. So then he goes on to talk about that story and how that sort of exemplifies this quality of like beauty and ugliness. Or
in some myths, Hephaestus was thrown out a cliff by Hera when he was young because he was so ugly, or something like that, or because he was born with some kind of imperfection, and he survived, and that was awkward. And Venus is his wife.
The Vestal Virgins they had to have like no blemishes, no like quote unquote like defects. They were chosen from like age 6 or age 10 for 30 years, which I thought was interesting. Another like sort of like Saturnine like cycle. Yeah, exactly. And just like when you think again about the ideals of beauty and kind of like what it takes to be a temple priestess essentially, and like all the kind of things that went on with choosing beauty not through material means but through spiritual means, and sort of taking those offerings to the fire. So yeah, that dichotomy of what's ugly and what's beautiful. And so Austin goes on to say this conjunction of opposites is the key for this Decans formula to the mysteries of life. So kind of everything we've talked about, the mysteries of life, are kind of embedded in some of these qualities.
To me, the spiritual truth doesn't get lost when the person understands that the beauty of the process is noticing how it changes into something unpredictable, but that you need to still adapt, that you need to still derive beauty from, you know? And I think it could be Virgo, and even though it's the fall of Venus, it could be the place where Venus, through that process of going inward, of not being able to embody itself, learns through pain that they should have a broader perspective, and they should not allow the spirit to wane just to keep the appearance of stability.
Exactly. Like when Venus is stripped of her jewels and her embroideries and like forced to go into that hermit space, like who are we? What is true beauty? What is true purity at that point? Like what is the truth when all of our layers of linens are taken away?
Stripped, yeah,
exactly. So then Austin says on an emotional level, The visions that stain this face teach one not to be repulsed by process, nor to be glamored by the apparent perfection of the finished thing. So yeah, just what we were saying, just working with those kind of two energies.
Trust your process.
And yeah, we've got mutable energy here. We've got the end of the summer. We're getting into, you know, the darkening of the light and death. And we'll talk about that more in the next Decan of Virgo, where it really is exemplified. So I think that's what I have on my notes from Austin. That was a really good discussion. Thank you guys. That was really good. And thanks, Austin, for bringing us a little bit of food for thought to be able to banter around the topic. So KD, do you want to take it away with T. Susan Chang and the cards?
Yeah, totally. I have, again, as Elsa mentioned, we have 3 cards representing this decan. The Empress, which is for the planet Venus. We have the Hermit, which represents the sign of Virgo. And then we have the Nine of Pentacles, or the Lord of Gain, as the minor arcana card. So I've selected a few different tarot cards here that I really feel emphasize some of the themes that we've already talked about and kind of delve further into these archetypes. So the Empress card we have on the right here, we have the typical Rider-Waite-Smith image that you might be familiar with and that you've seen a couple of different times in our episodes previously in Taurus, and I believe in Cancer. We had some Venus decans. But, you know, I really love the images of luxury that it creates, for example, in the cat tarot deck, the little cat with her crown and her floofy pillow. But I also
love the Venus paw print. I'm
I
sorry.
know.
So cute.
little
It is.
It's adorable. It's adorable. But I really also like this middle card, which is from the Scapini deck, because of the image of the Empress as an angel. And she's also wearing armor. And to me, this is a very Venus and Virgo image. This is the image of somebody who's, it's almost the Vestal Virgin style. She's hiding her figure, and she is more interested in, I guess, emitting the pure might of her position, as opposed to the jewels and the silks necessarily. It's a very much more pure embodiment of the Empress in some ways. So I thought that was a pretty appropriate.
I like how they keep the link with the
High Priestess with the moon.
Yeah.
Yes. Me too. Me too.
On her foot, underneath.
Not
her
only
foot.
the moon, but the flowiness of the blue dress that represents the waters, just like in the High Priestess of the Rider-Waite.
Yeah. I do. I really love that you brought this when I was looking at it earlier. And I thought the exact same thing about, like, with the Empress that we have with the pomegranate dress. Again, it's loose, it's in nature, it's got this like luxe, like mother, like pregnant quality with the pomegranate. But when looking in contrast at this Empress card, right away I noticed the wings. In Virgo, I think we said it before, but Virgo was this
a winged being.
Yeah, this winged being. And to see it here, I was just like, wow, that's really.
And I want to mention that there is this tradition in tarot that says the main characters of major arcana and the minor arcana are only the Fool, the Magician, and the Empress. And there is some debate as if the Fool is also the Magician. But I think there is, at least, but I might be wrong. But these 3 characters are the ones that appear in all the other cards. So I like when there is a good reference to the High Priestess and this Empress card. And in the Rider-Waite version, we see the river that flows from the High Priestess coming in the back of the Empress card. So she is there represented as well. You see the dress also kind of touches that water, but you don't, as you also saying, that there isn't such a strong resemblance as in the Scapini deck.
Yeah.
Scapini, yeah, that's right.
Yeah, it does have this very sort of stoic and empowered quality, but still keeping the mysteries of, you know, the feminine there. But yeah, it's armored. That's a different, it's armored, right? Here she's like in a linen, like you feel like it's just flowing in the breeze.
She's vulnerable, you know, in her other depictions, but here she's armored up.
She's mighty for sure.
Mighty.
I love it.
And that is a theme that I want to mention when we get to the 9 of Pentacles. So do remind me if I don't mention it, but that theme of the strong, independent woman and the empowerment of Venus and Virgo is something that I want to mention, and that's
yeah.
also this
And
card.
yeah, absolutely, because you see it here too. You see the phoenix, you've
Yeah.
got the wings, you've got the moon like bulb, you've got the sort of like spiral columns with the flames on top, and you have the phoenix, and you have like a very empowered version here. And just to remind everyone, in the crown of the Empress and in the coins here at the top, those are the planets. You even see it on the kitty's crown. And you see it underfoot with the Empress in the middle depiction in the Scapini as well. But that brought to mind again that Vestal Virgin, that fire, because they're hearth keepers. They're hearth keepers for the mother goddess, for the earth goddess, right? They're keeping the flame of the hearth alive. And we see it here, you know, just with that fire and sort of a little bit more, you know, powerful, instead of sort of like, I'm wifey or whatever, you know,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
I'm pregnant,
On
I'm
her fainting couch or
I'm
something.
chilling, yeah, on some pillows or whatever. You do kind of see this empowered, flamed, winged sort of creature. So
I want to address this quality of the Vestal versions, the Virgoan quality of caring for details and all of that in this moment, because we bringing it to a more personal sphere. We have our ways of tending to our needs in our daily routines, our daily habits, when we wake up, how we brush our teeth, how we do our laundry, how we take care of our kitchen, food, whatever. All of those things are obligations that we barely think about when we're doing them, because they are, you know, obligations. We just have to do them and just know that they weigh on us sometimes. But the Vestal Virgins, they would do these kinds of workings that were nobody else wanted to do, or that was very specific. And they would do it, you know, they would embody those qualities. So what I'm saying here is that we all have this Empress quality. When the Empress comes out in a reading for someone, maybe they need to pay attention to how they're tending to their everyday rituals. Like, are you keeping yourself aware of these areas of your life in equal manner? Are you balancing them? Are you really being able to embody your full potential in each part of your life, because you're caring for the things that you're owning up to properly? You know?
Yeah, like, are you feeding the flame? Like, it was their job to keep the flame alive and to take sacred waters and sprinkle it, so that, like, sort of spiritual cleansing. Like, it's not just doing the dishes or whatever. It's like
but I'm bringing it to more,
Yes, it embodies that spiritual quality of like tending to the home, tending to the hearth fire, tending to the sacred waters, in this habitual way. Yeah.
And I was just saying that because of the 12 stars in the crown of the Empress here.
Yeah, I love that. Well, so just to kind of give a glimpse, a little peek ahead at what we'll always mention as we do at the end of the video, which are some celebrities with their sun sign in this decan. Beyonce's birthday falls in this decan, and so I thought it was appropriate to show a little picture of her in her Empress glory. I don't know if you can see how empressy that is, but she's pregnant at the time, I believe, with her twins. And she's got the halo that is often depicted, we've talked about this before, in Renaissance era decks to indicate enlightenment. And yeah, that's some pretty empressy gold going on as
this
far
is
as
like
sparklies.
Yes, this and the one where she looks like the Virgin Mary are like the ones to me that like really stick to her archetype, that like stick with me, at least as far as this goes. And you think of her as like queen bee, right? Like this bee, it's buzzing, it's honey, it's like this, it's a busy bee, right? It's this sort of like nutritive, spiritual, like power food that's like super feminine, and you got, you know what I'm saying? And just the idea that she's like this queen bee, really, and this image is a powerful one that I feel like when we think about Beyonce as an archetype, and when we're trying to, yes, this is it, and this embodies like just how when we with Virgo 1 we talked about like Mother Teresa being like a really powerful embodiment of Virgo 1. Yeah, this one, it's perfect. I'm glad you brought that
too. And she could be her own tarot card.
I wonder if there is a Beyonce tarot deck. There should be.
idea. Who wants to get in on that? Anyway, so I had to throw that in there before we move on to the Hermit. So the Hermit is the card of Virgo, so you're going to recognize it in our previous video and in our next video. It will always be in here, but I chose a selection here. From left, we have the Rider-Waite-Smith, more traditional depiction that you might be familiar with. Also the Led Zeppelin album cover, I like to joke. In the middle, we have a deck by Micah Ulrich, who is a wonderful artist. You can find him on Twitter and Instagram. And then on the far right, we have the Russian tarot deck. One of the things that I wanted to mention about the Hermit, which we broadly can interpret as solitude, is that is not agreeable to the Empress. And we've kind of discussed this before. The Empress doesn't want to be alone, and Venus doesn't want to be alone. It wants to bring people together, it wants to connect people.
Venus isn't alone.
Exactly. In the fall, she's alone because she's striving for perfection. But that's just not totally agreeable, to the Empress to be in Virgo's sign, to be with the Hermit, or to be the Hermit. And I also find it interesting what she mentioned. I hadn't planned to comment on this about the alternate Chaldean rulership of Saturn as the Decan Lord here.
The triplicity, the alternative triplicity to the Chaldean Venus. Yeah.
Yes. So in some ways, we can think of Saturn as maybe not exactly the opposite of Venus, but definitely a counterpoint to Venus. And so Saturn also is its perfection. It's the refinement through extreme pressure and extreme duress, So in some ways, that's not agreeable to Venus, because Venus wants to luxuriate. Venus wants to not work super hard, wants to relax, and wants to have the pretty things around them. But the Hermit is just not that. The Hermit is the endurance, the solitude. And so I think it's very important to remember. And I like Saturn as the alternate.
Yeah, and we talked about this last time. I do too, and Austin talks about it a lot as well, about, in this particular case, just the alternative Lord with a triplicity scheme. And because you have to, because the Hermit card is the Saturn card. It was Father Time. It was the sort of old man, the renunciate. So it's a renunciating quality. And I think Venus, she's about connection, and she's not alone. And when she's forced to renounce and look inside, that's a very, very difficult thing for someone who's used to connecting and opulence and all those things. Like, for Saturn to strip that away. And we have to remember that Saturn is the exaltation Lord of Venus. So in order for ultimate truth and ultimate beauty, you're going to have to reconcile with that aloneness.
It's the other way around, right? Venus is the exaltation Lord of Saturn, because Saturn is exalted in Venus's sign.
That's what I meant. Yeah. That's what I meant. I'm sorry. So yes, with Saturn being exalted in Libra, that idea of like Venus having to at some point strip it away, go within and pare it down or whatever, for the ultimate art, the ultimate truth, the ultimate beauty to come in, that ultimate judgment, the exactitude of Saturn. It's like, it's difficult for Venus to do, but it's the sort of ultimate possibility of coming to a real truth or a real beauty, which is that sort of forced renunciation that Saturn gives.
Yeah. And both Saturn and the Hermit are very inward looking and very introspective. And so we see this perfection turned inward is what T. Susan Chang says a couple of times in her chapter on this Decan. It's very indicative of perfection turned inward. Yes. Before I switch over this slide here, I want you to note too that I did pick 3 cards here that have the lantern being held by the Hermit, kind of extending his arm forth in front of him and holding that lantern. Note that, because you'll see that as a common theme in these depictions of the Nine of Pentacles. So we have a few different variations on that card here on this slide, and you'll recognize in the first two, there's an element of that extended arm, right? Again, the cat is kind of a funny version, but you can almost picture in your head that instead of holding the beautiful falcon with its covering on the end of her arm, she might be extending a lantern out like the Hermit. So it's that same motion of movement to some extent, of an inner journey perhaps, but it's in a much more rich and luxurious setting for the Nine of Pentacles figure here, who is clearly the Empress.
Yeah, with her Venusian robe, and just like we've got the pomegranate or the Venusian robe. And I was thinking about this is like, you know, with the abundant garden, we had the walled garden, right, where we planted all of our seeds in Taurus.
Yes.
And now we see the grapes on the vine that have come to fruition here in the mutable earth sign. But what we don't see, and what Venus is sort of not representing here, but sort of alluding to with the lantern or the hooded falcon, is all of the work that it took to get those grapes to their ripe, to, you know, all the pruning, all the, you know, getting out of weeds and rodents and all of those kind of like grimy things that we think about, like the devil's in the details with Virgo. And you sort of just get this final product, which again is back to the Hermit, which is like Mercury is the psychopomp, that it does force us to look within, because it is the deconstructionist, right? Like here in this, it's like, it's not forcing us to look at all of the details of what it takes to make that opulent harvest at the end of the year. It's just kind of inwardly, sort of almost like selflessly, just showing the beauty in the final product and not all of the toil.
Absolutely. And the other thing that I think is kind of cool about this card, kind of riffing off what you just said, is that it is a garden. It is agriculture. It is fruit that has grown on the vine. And fruit doesn't last forever. Fruit rots once it's picked, once it's harvested, fruit rots. So the real important piece to this card that's important to remember is that it's fleeting. This beauty, this brilliance is fleeting. It's not necessarily ensured to last forever, even though Pentacles, theoretically, that suit earth signs, it does have a tendency to relate to something enduring, something long lasting. It's not permanent in this case, though. It's important to remember that, because we do also get hints of that in the other two cards that I've put on this slide. The first on the left of these larger two is the Science deck, which in this deck, the Nine of Pentacles is represented by Aurora Borealis, or the Northern Lights, which, you know, as should be clear, they are not permanent. They only appear every once in a while, and it's magnificent and it's beautiful, but it's fleeting and it goes away. It inspires wonder and awe in us, and it says something about the beauty of the universe and how these combinations of light particles and other elements in the air create such a beautiful image. It's amazing. It's perfect. The details are what make it happen, but it's fleeting. It's temporary.
And it's meant to be fleeting, because one of the qualities of Venus is being attractive to the spirit, because it's not familiar. It's something that is like you, that wants to make itself familiar to you, and it attracts you so it can, you know, integrate into your consciousness in a way. I was looking at that cat, and it's representing the bird is representing the falcon in a way, but also these are two animals here, and it represents how we are always following our animal instincts. The cat is trying to play with the bird, even if it has a lot of food in its plate. It doesn't have to play with the bird, but all the circumstances there are set, so it will follow its instincts. So it doesn't have to deny itself anything. It has, you know, something to play with. It has its food. Why not have both? Well, there is such a thing. Like it will stop being beautiful. He will, the bird will stop singing. You know, there is not going to be that sense of abundance forever.
Yeah, and I was thinking too, when we were talking about like the rotting, okay, we've got rotting, which is Saturn, right? And so we've got that sort of looming, like you must cut it down and it will rot. So that's Saturn.
Yep.
And then you have the changeability of like turning the grapes into wine because you have to or it'll spoil, right? So
Yep.
you have that sort of like mercurial changeability, just like you have the Aurora Borealis here, which it kind of reminds me, you would almost think like the Hermit as he's walking through the cliff with his lantern. I could see the Aurora Borealis like behind him, like in a way, or that being the same principle as that sort of ethereal light that's coming from his lamp. That's not a flame, but sort of like an inner light. That's what the Aurora Borealis sort of like reminds me of here. And then just one more thing is about the card, the Mother Peace deck. When we're saying beauty will fade or everything must rot or it must be preserved in a certain way in order to make it not rot. Like if the grapes will just rot if you don't pick them, they're also going to rot once you pick them. But if you can change them and transmute them into wine, then you do have a long and stable wealth that you can build, which is that 9 of Pentacles. Like if you can make the transformation beyond like just the jewels into like my inner beauty or whatever, or if you can make the transmutation of the ripe grape into the wine that I can sell or keep or store or whatever it is, you've got that changeability, which is the mercurial nature. And then that sort of like Saturn lesson that's happening with the Hermit. And that's here that we're talking about. And when you see the Mother Peace deck, you think like the beauty that happens once the physical beauty fades, right? So you've got this woman who's got all these tools of ritual and inner wisdom, and she's beautiful, and you can tell that she's like radiating this beauty in her senior years. So like in that Hermit stage, you've collected that wisdom, and that's that inner beauty of transformation that we're talking about, transformation through time. If you can cultivate that inner space, you can cultivate the grapes into wine. Which I see here with her craft,
and just a reminder that in the Mother Peace deck, the Hermit is actually called the crone. It's a female figure who's older and wise with the staff and the cloak. So I could see this being the crone. She's working alone, perfection alone being the title of the chapter in T. Susan Chang's book. She is clearly very experienced. But she's not lonely. She's confident. She's efficient. And what she's actually doing here in this depiction is she's creating a sand sculpture, sand art, which again, beautiful, but fleeting, temporary, brilliant, but not always going to be there. And she's okay with it. She's still working hard to make something beautiful because it's the journey and not the destination. Sometimes you have to find joy in the chop wood, carry water mindset. And that's what she's doing here in this.
And that's what Virgo does when it looks within. And everyone go check out like Tibetan sand mandalas.
Beautiful.
And it's like that's that same thing as like the preciousness of the human birth, that same tradition of like you make these sand sculptures and then wind blows and then you sweep it away. And and I also see, I think one of these coins that she has, one of these discs of crafts, like is a peyote button, which also makes me think about again the green and yellow one on the right.
This one.
Yeah. And so again, that's that inner journey, right? It's that forced going within and looking at those dark places in order to bring that wisdom out into your consciousness. So yeah, it's really beautiful card. I love that card.
Yeah, and I do want to also say that the in most decks, I would say every deck that I have, the figure on this card is a woman. And there is something that T. Susan Chang talks about in her chapter on this, where she does pinpoint this card as something that she gets when she is reading for women who are empowered, who are independent and empowered, but maybe just missing a little bit of that connection. And that's because this is about perfection alone. So,
that's powerful. Again, it's not just Venus having to strip herself away in order to go inward on that inward journey of Mercury, it's also Mercury learning to not just transmute and deconstruct, but also build relationships, like that commerce aspect or that sort of psychopomp aspect, build those deeper relationships. Like once you've gone in and stripped it all away, like what are you bringing back? And I think that sort of like when we think of like Virgo as like the servant or something like that,
Yeah.
that's where we're looking to like, you know, serve others and connect with others in a really deep way that comes from a like a humble inner space once you've cultivated that. But that's a necessary process to build that connection again with the community, not just go within, but bring something back. And I think that's what this woman is doing here with her peyote and her craft, is like bringing something back to the community. That's the shaman. It's not just the inward journey, it's bringing that wisdom back to the community and connection to the community.
Well, you know, you can, and just for every one of us, no matter how many Virgo placements you have, when you produce, when you create, you produce, you have to refill your cup somehow. You have to consume something. And so the point being, in this Nine of Pentacles, in the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, she hasn't yet consumed the fruits of her labor. She has not consumed yet the grapes. She's still in that production mode. And yeah, we have to get there. That's kind of what the 10 is, but
yeah. And like, what is an abundant harvest if you're not enjoying it with your loved ones? What's the wine and the grapes?
What does it
like
matter?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
So those were the cards I had. Would you like me to stop sharing and show some of your, if you'd like to show some cards?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have that many to show. We've shown these cards. I just wanted to remind people that like the Magician is the Mercury card and the Hermit is the Virgo card, but how, they have like some similarities. So if we kind of, we're drawing on some of that Magician quality when we're looking at the mercurial quality of the Hermit. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. So maybe we move on to the Picatrix.
Sure. So what the Picatrix says is, there rises in the second face of Virgo a man of beautiful color, dressed in leather, and over his garment of leather is another garment of iron. This face is one of petitions, requests, and gain, tribute, and denying justice. This is its form. So I find it interesting, again, we have that repeating pattern of the garment of leather and iron that Austin also points out. And it's again about that concealment of the spirit. It's a man of beautiful color, they say. It's interesting that they use the word beautiful here. You can imagine that from your own cultural standpoint as anything you would like. But the fact of the matter is it's meant to infer this image that's specifically beautiful to you in your head, because it doesn't matter the color, it just matters that the man has a beautiful color to you. And that is to say that it is meant to be attractive, and that attractiveness is covered in these protective layers outside of the body of the man. It's an encasing that has been put there for protection. And denying justice feels like there has to do somewhat with this disconnection from the other that these layers cause. Again, that getting lost in translation aspect that I mentioned before, because you don't have any mercy, which is mercy is basically feeling the other's heartache, the other's suffering, the other's life, understanding that they have in their head, basically feeling what they're feeling. And I think that having this is a face of petitions, so it's highly demanding perhaps of others, right? If it denies justice also. And again, we see a fallen quality of Venus here, even though it's present with the beautiful color of the man being covered by these layers. This is as far as I want to go with it, because I feel we've explored a lot of these archetypes already.
Yeah, we have, but just, I want to say something too, just the reiteration of like, there's wealth for the magical doings, but there's no justice. And to me, again, that's like Venus at her highest ideal, and Jupiter too, like the good ones or whatever. It's like truth and beauty equal justice, or it's like kind of the same thing, right? But here you have like material gain with no justice. Again, it's that fallen queen who's like, give me the stuff and no justice for the, the workers or something like this. And it again reminds me of that alternate Saturn rulership, where it's like, oh yeah, have all the things, but you won't get justice here or something. And that's the denial of justice. Reminds me of Saturn and Mercury, right? Which is the debater. It's like, well, if there's a loophole, like you're not going to get any justice. You can get all the stuff, you can get all the commerce, but like you can also like get shifty and like get out of getting that real justice or something like that. So that's kind of where I was coming from with that. There's one more thing.
That aspect of the law, sorry, just to add, that aspect of the law, Virgo being the 12th sign from Libra, where if you have a lawyer or Mercury, an interpreter of the law, who will find the loophole, who will interpret it in such a way as to take the jury or the judge to a certain petition that's favorable but not just, favorable to their client but not just necessarily. Think of that image when you think of Virgo and Venus put together, because Venus is about the law, and Mercury, because it's established by the group so everyone can live well, but Mercury comes in as a debater who interprets that law according to the, favorability.
And that truly is the practice of law. And as somebody who thought at one point in time I wanted to be a lawyer, that was something, I am very mercurial, but that was something that doesn't jive so well with me. It's like, this is not the principle, this is not the spirit of the law, which is a phrase that's commonly used, and I think we would associate with Libra. But the 12th house from Libra would be Virgo. It's the undoing of the Libran archetype, is those people who will go through word for word in every law and find where the and is out of place. And because that and is out of place, the whole thing is null and void. It's semantics. That's something that Mercury and Virgo can do.
Yep. That's it. It's Virgo's the lawyer. It's like Venus is like, let's get justice here, and Virgo's like, well, we'll have the law here, and I'll tell you, I'll interpret that, like, let's see if
justice versus the law.
Yeah, like it's arguing to get someone off or under the law. Like, you think of like embezzlement or some kind of like court case where it's like, yeah, they got off like in the court of law because they had a good attorney, you know what I'm saying? So like, and that's that mercurial quality that can like put down that Venusian quality as well. The only other notes that I had that I just wanted to mention is back to the Vestal Virgin thing, just because I had forgotten to mention it before. And you all can go, check out the stories on the Vestal Virgins. But Vesta is Hera. Hera is the earth goddess, right? And again, when you think of like agriculture, earth, you've got the earth sign, you've got Saturn, you've got all these things. But Hera is the firstborn daughter of Saturn. And so I thought that was really interesting, as we're talking so much about the Saturnine archetype as the triplicity ruler and the alternative scheme, just that the earth goddess, Hera, who is Vesta, who is the hearth keeper, was the firstborn of Saturn. So I forgot to mention that part before. Thought that was a cool little kind of wraparound with the alternative rulership. So that being said, yes, celebrities, do we have anyone beyond Beyonce? Like, is it even, is there anything more beyond Beyonce?
I have a couple. Have also born during this decan where their sun falls in Virgo too, are Freddie Mercury, the frontman of Queen, who is a delightful figure. If you haven't seen the biographical movie about him and Queen, it's okay. So check it out. I don't know. It's fairly accurate from what I understand.
It's interesting with Queen too. Just again, Queen Bee, Queen, Empress.
Very good point. And if you've never heard the song Killer Queen, very apropos for this, I think. It's all about a queen who's willing to just kill for the nice things, essentially. Kill for the nice caviar and the Chandon Moët. Anyway.
No justice. baby.
No justice. We also have okay, so I'm going to keep on the royalty theme for just a second. Queen Elizabeth I is actually a Virgo, born during this time, as is King Richard the Lionheart, which was a couple hundred years before Queen Elizabeth, but was also a very poignant. I believe actually he was named because of proximity to some constellation to do with the lion. Is that right?
Who? Sorry?
Richard the Lionheart.
I don't know.
No? Okay. Well, heard
Maybe.
that through the grapevine. Maybe.
I
Constellation
don't know if
shift.
that's true.
And then the others that I have are Idris Elba, Evan Rachel Wood, Adam Sandler, and Otis Redding.
Those are good ones.
You have any? Yeah.
I didn't grab any, but I'm looking over some more notes just about, like, you know, if you wanted to go, and Katie was talking about this too, like T. Susan Chang mentions like the empowerment, but the Vestal Virgin like figure is, you know, they had political power. And you think about queens, right? That's what reminded me to go back to my notes, is like the Vestal Virgins they could choose to marry after their Saturn time was up. That's a thing. Like, they could choose to stay priests or they could marry. They had political power. They could vote. And then when you think about, like, Venus is a symbol of fertility in fall in the Virgin sign.
Yes.
And again, back to that, like, barrenness, where you get like the changeability, but the barrenness, maybe you think of barrenness, Virgo being a barren sign of, you know, a Saturn thing or a dying off, but just that idea of like empowerment, children, the pregnant one falling in the sign of the Virgin, you know, and not to, I know we're already at celebrities, but I just wanted to like mention that when we were talking about like fertility and queenliness.
I think that that's important. I think that at least a few of these figures, namely Elizabeth, Evan Rachel Wood, and Beyonce, are very empowered women.
Oh,
they are
Elizabeth,
very empowered women.
Elizabeth is an image of the Vestal Virgin in a way,
Yes.
because she is married to England famously, and to no man.
Yep.
Of course, she was not an actual virgin, but this is what the Vestal Virgins were not also, I think, actual virgins. They were just unmarried. They were not supposed to be compromised to any man.
Until after their duties. Until after their duties. And you know what?
There were other types of priestesses that kind of uphold this pattern of the Vestal Virgins, of keeping the hearth fire, of keeping the nation's spirits up and things like that. And those were not virgins per se, but they were people who were unmarried and dedicated their bodies to serving armies, for instances, when they came back from war, for releasing of the energy and things like that. And they were exclusively, you know, their way of worshiping was exclusively that, you know, doing that in that sexual sense until their time was up, in that servitude sense. So I think that, what was the character that we were talking about? Elizabeth really represents that in this sense. She embodied that stability character. And you have to think of it as, she knew that the institution, again, this is a dying institution. This is the monarchy at a time where they had just broken off with the church. So the claim to the throne by the Tudors was very threatened. Beyond that, Henry VIII had been a horrible person. Mary had been a horrible person to a lot of people. And then their brother, you know, there was a lot of instability in the throne line at that time. And so Elizabeth had to step up and be like a Vestal Virgin.
The public was just like sick of it. They were like, this is too much. Monarchy is too much.
Because it was like Catholic, no Catholic, Catholic, not Catholic. No Catholic. And then Elizabeth came in to consolidate things, and it was called the Golden Era, the Elizabethan era. She was called Gloriana. She was raised on high as this high priestess of the British people.
And she was referred to as the Virgin Queen. And
yes, the Virgin Queen.
Virginia, you know, West Virginia and Virginia in the US named for her honor.
And she did not get married because she saw what happened to her sister, older sister, when she married the King of Spain. She was demoralized. She lost power, basically. And so it was all about keeping that essence of the institution centered on her.
Perfection alone.
Perfection alone.
Yeah, absolutely. And being able to choose marriage or choose like that and have a vote.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a powerful image, and to have I guess control over your body, because like a woman's obligation was to be pregnant. So for someone to be a virgin or to not have a child or to be barren or to be infertile, and like David was saying, like there's certain way of like claiming your own sexuality or sacred sexuality is sort of like built into that idea that we could vote or we could choose not to have kids or choose not to have a husband. I mean, those things in ancient Rome, like, you know, it's.
And she died from lead poisoning, which is very Saturnian, but it was because of the faint appearances that she was trying to put on. You know, she was trying to keep that youthful image forever because of the Gloriana part that had been thrust upon her. So she confused herself with the institution to a point where it was detrimental to her health. It killed her.
It was makeup. It was lead makeup.
Through time. It's something poisoning with lead through time. It's very Saturnian. Again, mixing in those two rulership modes.
For beauty. Yes.
Keeping up that image for the institution again that you embody, that we were talking about.
Yeah, where like Venus is a mirror or sex, right? Venus, like like even like as a talisman, it's a mirror, right? And it's like sex or being pregnant, where Virgo is like the sacred flame or something like that, you know, like something of those inner qualities, belonging to God, not man, or something like this, you know? Or the state in this case.
Being married to be ideal.
Yeah. Okay, well, I feel like we've done a pretty good treatment. I really appreciate this. This was really fun. Of course, the Virgo ones are going to be like fun for us. They're juicy. So David Fisher and KD Dayton, we can find you where? David Fisher, you're at In the First Place?
Yeah, In the First Place, astrology.com. That's also my handle on Instagram, Twitter. I am at the First Place, at First Place Astro. And Facebook page as well. You guys can find me. I'm also doing reduced fare readings for this month. I also need to eat and do a lot of things. So if you guys want to hit me up, just find me on one of those pages and send me a message, and I'll be happy to contact you.
And then you have an AFAN talk coming up, don't you, on the 29th?
Oh yeah, on the 29th, I'm going to be talking about Britney Spears and how I was able to predict that she was going to come off this oppressive situation that she was living with her family. Of course, not saying that she's out of it completely, because the scars are there, the psychological impact, everything that she's still dealing with legally because of that is still there. But the main oppressive system that was thrust upon her when she was back, 25, 26 years old is off, has been dissolved. The people had fled, and we are going to talk about how I was able to predict that through some Hellenistic techniques, using some Hellenistic techniques.
I know, it's so fun. Brittany's Chart's fun. We've been working on it and doing it together for a long time. I'm very excited about your talk. I hope everyone can come and join. And KD, you're at kddayton.com.
Right.
And any other things you want to just plug real quick?
I'm on Twitter at KD Dayton, Instagram KD_Dayton, and Facebook at KD Dayton Astrology. I am also have a newsletter that comes out regularly that I'm just picking back up now. So you can find links to subscribe on all of those different profiles. So
awesome. Yeah, and reach out to me through email. I've got a little bit of extra time for you throughout September, and I'd love to serve and connect. So hit us up. Don't miss David's talk, and we will see you in the third decan of Virgo. And KD, do you want to read the poem today to take us out? Okay, awesome.
Yeah.
All right, y'all. Happy Virgoing.
Yeah, and happy almost birthday to you Virgo lovelies out there. All right, this is called Trimming the Sails by Vassar Miller. I move among my pots and pans that have no life except my own, nor warrant save from my flesh and bone that serves my tastes and not a man's. I'm jealous of each plate and cup, frail symbol of my womanhood, Creator-like, I call it good, and vow I will not give it up. I move among my things and think of Woolman, who, for loving care, he had for slaves used wooden ware, and wash my silver in the sink. Wishing my knives and forks were finer, though Lady Poverty won heart, of Francis, her male counterpart, would find in me a sad decliner. Sometimes regrets old dogs will hound me with feeble barks, yet my true love is brother fire and sister stove, and walls and friends and books around me. Yet to renounce your high romance, being part pain, may so to do, prove half humility that you may bless good Woolman and sweet Francis. So Virgo.
It is. Ciao, everyone. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Matao kako bersama you demikian soba da soba kena matai bang kau di mana demikian soba dan soba atai banaga ujuna baikana kamaya tak ongai esa Your Majesty, Matari Bekana Sabaso, in the Kina, the Bine, to your girls, in by your doma, with the bike, 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 do you know the Sono mia bagolina, che voglio raccogliermi con me go by. Io non la conosco.